Hi, it's Lee from Silverback Runner, and today's video is going to be about Atreyu running shoes. Pretty much their new base model, their version 2, and the pros and cons, and also the type of runner that either is going to love this shoe or may hate it, because people are always saying, is this a good shoe? Is that a bad shoe? And it's just like saying, is that pair of trousers a great pair of trousers? Or is that, it comes down to suitability. And hopefully by the end of this review, you'll get a better idea of what the type of shoe it is and if it's likely the type of shoe that's going to work for you, plus pros and cons. So let's start off at the beginning, because the beginning isn't that far away. Atreyu are a fairly new running shoe company. I think I saw a review on YouTube a while back. It just caught my attention because they were really taking things back to basics. Now, to give you a little bit of background on me, I have a rather kind of Jekyll and Hyde kind of relationship with running shoes, in the respect that I love the idea of minimalist running shoes, and then every now and again I go quite minimalist, I get injured, and then I go back to something with more support or more stability or that sort of thing. And I think a lot of runners are like that. I think some runners always want that stability. They want that maximal shoe. Some people are at the other extreme, barefoot running or minimalist shoes. And then a lot of people in between, they're not quite sure where they should go. And of course, with all the reviews online, it doesn't really help, because obviously everyone's telling you this is the next shoe. So I kind of arrived from that place, and I went on the website. The shoes were made in Austin, Texas, I think, and it was a fairly small setup, and they were doing a subscription model, which interested me. This was the first base shoe. They had about 5 or 6 colorways, and I looked at it and I thought, well, I like the minimalist but not minimalist thing. I mean, it's not a minimalist shoe. It's got a 6mm drop, but it's obviously a lot more minimal than a maximal shoe, so it got me intrigued. Problem was, they hardly had any shoes in, and a very long story cut short, I ordered a pair of shoes out of interest. At the time, I think they were something like $55. Now, what I will come to later in this video is, obviously, they are a cheaper shoe, but depending on where you live will depend on how cheap they are, or even if you can get a pair. But we'll come to that later on. I ordered the shoes and realised that I'd ordered half a size too big, and went back to Atreyu. They were brilliant. They said, well, we haven't got your size, we'll cancel the order. 2 days later, said shoes turned up, and I thought, well, I better be honest. So I went back to Atreyu and said, I've got your shoes, half a size too big, but you still sent them. Said, have them on us. Now, the funny thing is, I wear my foot is about a 10.5. I normally run in about 11. This is 11.5. I put it on. Not a perfect fit, but I can run in it. So I started running in the base 1. As I say, it was a one-piece EVA midsole, sock liner, which is now very battered, with a very, very basic, tongue there, and, it quite loose and basic in and around the shoe. Now, you can see the wear and tear on the shoe. I've heard reviews, these running cost, last year 150 miles. This is where it comes back down to the type of runner you are. I'm 67 kilos at best. I think I'm fairly light on my feet for my age. On my last pair of on shoes, I just recently ran the Berlin Marathon in, and they've done over 1,000 miles. So perhaps I'm not the best person to ask, But the compression on these shoes, even after a couple of 100 miles, I'm going to get more out of them. The reality is other people won't. But this is the base one shoe. But I need to share this with you because this is where I came in at. Now, my experience with the base one was kind of like a lot of people probably with minimalist shoes. I think it's a neutral shoe. There's not a lot of, you're not getting any stability. I mean, you've only got to see. It's like you're left in the shoe and you're on your own. So I did quite a few long runs in them. Probably I shouldn't have done. They've got another shoe called the Artist, which I've now got. It's got a carbon plating, which is more for their long distances, but that wasn't available then. And I just love running in those shoes so much. I did a few 17 and 18 miles in there, and I'm not sure my body was ready for that. And that's my first tip. If you're coming from something fairly supported, the transition to possibly a Atreyu isn't going to be as much as if you were going into full-blown minimalist, because these aren't full-blown minimalist, but they are minimal. So that would be my first thing. So just recently, I got the Daily Trainer 2. Yes, I had to get white. I may regret that, but I just wanted it. It comes in a number of colorways that I love. Now, the differences are really a much plusher, I don't know if you can sort of see that, but a plusher tongue on there. Changes on the outside here. I think these would have been inside originally here. And the big thing is that it's got superficial, I'm reading this from my screen, superficial EVA midsole. And as I say, the TPU sock liner. So this means it's just a bit more hard wearing. Now, a lot of running shoes will have another layer of something here to protect you even more. So there's still the argument of how long something like this would last. So you've still got quite a lot of movement in here. It's still fairly minimal. This is more harder wearing than this, but probably not as hard wearing as if you're buying a pair of Hokas or as I've run in the past with Ons. It really depends on the type of runner that you are though. I have to say, absolutely love these trainers. I love them. They're about, I think in my size, just over 6 ounces. Feels like there's nothing on your feet. This gives you enough return, but it's not sloppy, it's not spongy. I've only done a few miles in them, so I can't tell you how long this lasts, this compression here. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a 600, 700 mile shoe. It's still a 6mm offset. So who's going to love this shoe? I think if you've got fairly good mechanics, biomechanics, and I haven't got perfect running form by no imagination, but I look for feedback from my running shoes and then I look to strengthen my body. If you're looking for your shoe to either protect you from that, or you need to because you have something that you can't change, then the Atreyu, rather like some minimalist shoes, might find you out on that. If you like the idea of something more minimalist but you're not quite willing to go the whole way, then something like this could really work for you because it's got good protection in that way. Less so here. In this mid part here, it holds you really nicely, I feel, here. But if you want a lot of support here, you're not going to get it. Personally, I don't want a lot of support there. I like the fact that I'm held in nice there. Fair bit of, sorry, get to the camera, fair bit of width here, but not ultra wide. It's not going to be like your full minimalist shoe where you got your whole toe spread or anything like that. So they're definitely not a minimalist shoe. But if you were transitioning, or if you wanted something to feel more minimal, but you weren't quite willing to go the whole way. If you love your maximal shoes, I think I saw a review, somebody said it was like running with nothing on your feet. And they meant that as a kind of put down. And that's the thing. If you want more support, more stability, a lot between you and the road, then probably a Atreyu Base Model version 2 isn't going to be the shoe for you. The way I look at Atreyu is like this. I'm quite old. I'm 57. When I was growing up with my mum in my mum and dad's house when I was a kid, stereos were getting more and more complex year by year. My dad loved his music, and he'd get a more and more complex stereo each year, and it had loads of different knobs and dials and stuff like that, and it looked like you were going to probably take off in it, let alone blooming play music in it. And then suddenly it went the other way, and you had these bare boxes, but the sound was still brilliant, but you only had about 3 dials and it just looked so minimalist. This is what I feel about these shoes. It's stripped back to what some people just need, which is the protection from the surface, something that doesn't weigh you down, so you get a good cadence. Well, I find I do, cadence of movement, but it's not, you know, saying it's doing this. It's not saying it's protecting you from that. It's not promising you that. It's keeping things ideally very simple. And like I said earlier on, purchasing. Now, I think the new version of the Base 2 is $85. Now, if you live in America, depending on your taxes, that's a cheap running shoe. So even if you get 300 miles from it, pretty good, because they've now stopped their subscription model. The problem begins if you're not in the USA. So I'm in the UK. I bought 2 pairs of shoes, the Base Model and the Artist. I had to buy them separately because if it went over £135, I had to pay extra tax at customs. Okay, fair enough, not great for the environment, that's fine. Then you've got 20% VAT on top of that, plus postage and packaging, which I think was about £20 or something like that, £30. It doesn't end up being super cheap, that's my point. Now, I don't care, because I'm not buying them because they're super cheap. I buy them because I really love them. My point being, though, is if you're a heavier runner and you're only getting 200 miles. I saw a review the other day. I've watched a few reviews of the new version 2, and a few people were saying they'd only just run a little bit and there's some compression at the back already, and they were arguing if they were going to get 200 miles out of them. If it's $85, I suppose you could argue 200-300 miles, get another pair, not the end of the world. Ecologically, you might argue that's not great. But if you've got all those taxes on top, and I'm sure throughout the world there's other taxes that you might pay, then you might start to argue, is it worth it? Now, I don't think I'm going to get just 200 out of these. I think I'll probably get 300, maybe even 500. So to me, they are still great value for money, but I think you would have to consider that. Now, there's some parts of the world you can't get them at all. Now, I'm not saying this to be knocking Atreyu. They're a young company. They're trying to establish themselves and not outgrow themselves, and promise the world and underdeliver. So I can see where they're going, and I'm sure there will be iterations in kind of like the UK, Europe, where in the end, you'll be paying less delivery costs, and you'll be able to legitimately, legally avoid certain extra costs you might get if you were going to buy them from the United States. But that is something to consider. So bottom line, tremendous improvement from the version 1 to the version 2. But what I like is I haven't thrown the baby out the bathwater. That they've kind of like said, well, look, we want to improve it, but we're not saying we hated this. So they've kind of they've said, yeah, we need something a bit more firmer, longer lasting, the EVA midsole here. So you've got this super critical, which is the more firmer of the two from the original version 1. Some people might say that still is not going to last long enough, like we've discussed, but that's an improvement. The comfort from the TPU sock liner, it's a nice touch, but they've maintained the things I like, which is the simplicity, the lightness. You could argue, you know, perhaps a few more bells and whistles, you know, for perhaps an ounce more weight would be worth it. That's perhaps to come in the future. But you've got to remember they've got the Artist as well, which has a bit more support, a bit of a thicker stack, and that's their kind of race shoe, and that's got a carbon rod through it. I'm not going to do a review of that because I've bought it but I haven't run it yet. So really great shoe, with some caveats which I hopefully have made you aware of, and you can then choose if the Atreyu version 2 base model is the one for you. I'm definitely going to be doing some miles in it. I absolutely love it. I think I am going to get a different colour as well, because these aren't going to work forever in the UK mud, are they? But I love them anyway. So it's Lee Boniface from the Silverback Runner. If you want to hear more, watch more of my videos, please subscribe. Somewhere around there's a button. And thank you for watching. Bye for now.